Hi everyone and welcome. Today I have another goodie for you that I have decided to re-upload to this channel, and that is why we can't have just one cookie. Why is it that we always think that we can have one cookie and then be satisfied with that, when we over and over again have proven to ourselves that that is not going to happen? So yeah, instead of remaking this whole video, I decided to take this one off my old channel and just reprocess and upload that one as well for you. So please enjoy, leave me a comment, let me know what sort of material you want me to produce. I'm happy to do these kind of videos, but I'm also happy to do other kind of videos. So let me know what you need, how I can best help you, and I will try to make that happen. Enjoy. I'm going to start with today's topic, which is why we can't have just one cookie. Because we all know this feeling. We intend to just have one cookie, and all of a sudden the whole packet is gone. So the obvious reason for this is obviously that we have a desire for cookies. And I would say rather an over desire for cookies, because it's not a normal desire. It's not the desire that you have for a steak or something. Right. So the question that we want to ask ourselves is probably, what are the major reasons for us to have this over desire? And I have boiled it down to three things. The first one is our hormones, or hormone imbalance, I would say, or dysfunction. And the second one is quite an interesting one. It's social conditioning. Now, if you think about it, everything we do that is in the form of entertainment has some connection to food, pretty much. You go to a wedding, you will find a starter, or before that you might have some drinks and some little nibbles, and then you have a starter, you have a main course, you have dessert, and then you have this beautiful wedding cake that you just can't wait to find out what it's like inside, if it's any good. Most often it isn't, but it's sugar, so if you like anything like me, you will still eat it. Same thing, funerals, around food, gatherings, whether that be with your relatives or other people, family gatherings, always around food. Events, take any sports event, or you're going to the cinema to watch a movie, we always have food. You can't just go and watch a movie and not have a bucket of popcorn, 3 chocolate bars, a large drink. You just need everything. And that makes the whole experience one, I guess. So if I was to remove the popcorn, the drinks, the chocolates, everything, and you just went to have that experience of watching the movie, most of you would not enjoy that movie. And why is that? Because you have that desire. You have conditioned yourself to watch this movie, but it's like the event is only 50% movie and 50% food. So you need it all to feel like you're actually experiencing the whole event. Now, the third thing that I want to mention is that is our inability to deal with our emotions. Now, I would never say, I've never said that I'm an emotional eater, ever. Because when I think about emotional eating, I'm thinking about people that are depressed or sad and they just sit at home and they're eating buckets of ice cream and cookies and whatever. And I don't identify with that at all. But what I have realized is that I am an emotional eater, but not for that very reason. The emotion that makes me eat is restlessness or boredom, mostly restlessness. And I've been like this my whole life. I've always been really restless. I need something to do pretty much all the time. My mom always complained that I couldn't just sit and do nothing. I always had to do something. So when I feel restless, my brain is just going on and on and on. And it's like, go to the kitchen, check if there's any food, is there any sugar, look in the cupboard, look in the fridge, look in the freezer, and maybe there's some cake in there. I know there isn't, but look anyway. Or maybe you can bake a cake. Oh, that would be nice. all these thoughts, and that is so bloody distracting. But that's what's going on when I'm feeling restless, which also means that I get absolutely nothing done because my thoughts are just taken up by all these, or my brain is taken up by all these thoughts about food and how to find it and what I'm going to do about it. And it's all nagging in my head. So today I'm not going to talk a lot about hormones, but I think I need to cover the basics so that everyone who's watching this now or on the replay, hi Sarah, by the way, will be able to follow a little bit. So hormones has an impact. So we have the two that I want to talk about is insulin and leptin. Most of you probably know about insulin already, but what I want to say is that insulin is a hormone that is released when you are eating carbohydrates, which is sugar or starch or whatever. Now, this is how it should be working. So you're eating this, it enters your bloodstream, and the insulin will help it be stored into your liver or your muscle cells. And that's to take it out of the bloodstream because it's actually toxic if the levels go too high. And that's all good. Unfortunately, because we're eating so much carbohydrate-rich foods with a lot of sugar and a lot of starch and a lot of everything, we also start secreting a lot of insulin as soon as we put anything in our mouths. So even if you were to suddenly go on a low carbohydrate diet, you would still get this insulin release. Now, this is a little bit off topic, but when you have too much insulin in your system constantly, you will become insulin resistant. And that is because you can imagine that the insulin is knocking on the cells to let sugar in constantly. And the cells are getting full. And they're like, no, sorry, we don't have the space. We can't let all this sugar in. So they're going to start closing these doors and pretend that they don't hear. And that is insulin resistance. Now, the problem with insulin resistance is that you will have more sugar in your blood, but over time, you will have less sugar in your cells because they're not listening anymore. And this will cause you to get cravings because you're not having enough sugar to do whatever your cells are doing, whatever type of cell that you're having, but all types of cells. So you will feel tired and your body will signal that you want to eat more carbohydrates, especially sugar, because that's quick energy. Insulin resistance, the mechanism is actually unknown, but it is correlated with leptin resistance. So leptin is a hormone which is produced by your fat tissue. So the more body fat you have, the more leptin you will produce. And leptin is a signal that tells your body that you have enough energy, you are full, stop eating. So when you have insulin resistance, this will somehow interrupt that pathway in your brain, the leptin pathway, and block that and cause leptin resistance. So all of a sudden, your brain doesn't get these signals that you are full and that you should stop eating. So now you have the insulin resistance, which will cause cravings because you don't have enough energy. And then you don't have the leptin signal, which does not tell you that you're actually full and you have enough energy. So your body will think that you're hungry and you need energy quickly. So both of those can help with stimulating the cravings. Now, I said I was going to be quick on the hormones, but I hope that that you understand what I mean and that you get the connection there anyway. So what I want to talk more about is actually brain chemistry. And I'm going to keep it really, really simple, just so that you understand what's going on, because we need to understand brain chemistry a little bit to understand what a craving actually is. So in our brains, we have an area which is called the reward center. And this is when it's stimulated, it is stimulated by a neurotransmitter, which is called dopamine. You might have heard about that. So you have dopamine receptors, and the dopamine will bind to those receptors, and that will create a feeling of well-being, and you will feel really good. And that's the reward when that is happening. You feel good. And that's quite easy to understand. So we're seeking out pleasurable things to get that stimulation. And that one of those things is food, and that could be any type of food. Now, to increase our chances of survival, that's how we have evolved this whole system. So it's not just food, it's other things like sex, a connection with other people in any type of form, because you want to be in a tribe to be protected. You don't want to be on your own because that is not safe. Connections, heat or warmth, and so on. Everything that's stimulating or that increases your chances of survival will produce an amount of dopamine release in your brain. So that's just to reinforce this behavior, basically. So that's why we have this whole system. Now, the problem with processed foods, which is any type of, anything that is manufactured that is not looking like real food, which is sugar, flour, and even baked goods like pizza and whatever. All of those are processed foods. They are pretty much concentrated and they're already broken down, and they will stimulate our reward center much, much more. And the reason for that is that they have an over-release of dopamine. So imagine that, let's say that a steak would release an amount of dopamine. On a scale from 1 to 10, it might be a 4. Now, I'm just making the figures up here. These are not real. And then you have a piece of chocolate cake, and that would then release an 8, which is twice as much. So your brain is going to be overstimulated, and it's going to think, wow, this piece of chocolate cake is twice as important as this piece of steak, because it's giving me a higher reward than eating steak. It must be much better. So we're always going to seek out foods with a lot of sugar in, because they stimulate our brain reward center much, much more with the higher dopamine release. So another problem that comes with this is that our brains are not designed for this amount of dopamine. We're designed to recognize the dopamine release, but not to this extent. So what's happening is that the dopamine is excreted, it binds to the receptors, and your brain is just overwhelmed. And it's thinking, oh, okay, this is really, really good. However, that's the response is a little bit over the top, so it starts to down-regulate the receptors. So again, I'm just going to make some figures up here to make it pretty clear what I'm talking about. This is not real by any means. So let's say you have 1 million dopamine receptors to start with. You eat that chocolate cake, and it starts to down-regulate the receptors, and you have 80% left, or 800,000 of these. Next day, you have another piece of chocolate cake, but you're only getting 80% of the reward. So our brains will be like, hang on, what's going on? This is really, really good, but it's not enough, because I want the same reward as I got yesterday. Why isn't that happening? You need to eat more. You need to eat more cake, because I want the same reward. And this keeps going on and on and on. So over time, you will down-regulate these receptors quite a lot. And that's why we need more of the same type of food to get the same reward. So if this had to do with, let's say, alcohol, we would say that you're building up your tolerance to alcohol, because you're not getting the effect of the alcohol as quickly. And it's the same thing with sugar, unfortunately. Even though no one says that we're building up a tolerance to sugar, that's exactly what we're doing. So now there's one more thing that I think is important to know about, and it's we have the lower brain, or the reptilian brain, if you like, which is a part of the brain which is all animals have this, basically. So it's connected to, it's only in or should we say, it's only interested in 4 things, the 4 Fs. So it's feeding, fighting, fleeing, and fornication, or I would say the other F word, but I'm going to try to not use that on this live stream for once. I'm probably going to fail anyway by the end of it. So those are the 4 things that it's mostly interested in. So that's what it will seek out, because that's also rewarding. Now, it's also really good at automating habits that we have. And one such habit might be just brushing your teeth. You just do it in autopilot. You don't really think about what you're doing. You just brush your teeth. You go in, you think about putting toothpaste on maybe, then you're done, and you can't really remember what you did. Or when you're driving to work, you don't really think. Sometimes you get into the car, you arrive at your destination, and you can't remember much at all about your journey there, and that's fine. And the reason we are doing this is because we want to be efficient. We want to use our higher brain, our prefrontal cortex, which is the planning part of the brain. We want to use the other parts of the brain for things that are more complicated and that we need to use. We need the energy to get things right. And when we're learning new things, we need to be able to focus on those more. So that's why we can multitask when we have something on automation at the same time as we're doing something with the other part of the brain, which is more complicated. Sorry, I just need a little bit of water. So just think about it. When you have, excuse me, when you have a strong reward for something, that's obviously something that is reinforcing. And what we know is that when you have something that releases a lot of dopamine, you will hyper learn that activity. So with very few repetitions of picking up the cake, eating the cake, getting the reward, picking up the cake, eating the cake, and you getting the reward, you will learn this behavior really, really quickly, so that you don't actually need to spend any brain power on doing this. It will all be delegated to your lower brain. And that's why we often think that we're eating unconsciously, because we have learned this behavior and we have practiced it so many times that we don't have to think about it. Something that we do for our survival, if you like, and it just goes on and on and on. And especially if you're watching TV, for example, God knows how much food you can eat when you're watching TV, when you're not thinking about what you're actually doing. So if you say that I'm going to have 1 cookie, and you get your packet of cookies out, you open the packet, you have your cookie, you're eating it, and at the same time you're thinking about something else, or you're watching TV, talking to someone. Then you reach out for the second cookie, and your brain pathway is all of a sudden interrupted, and you have to look down because you can't find that cookie, and you just notice that the packet is empty. Now, someone else could have eaten them, but if you're alone, no one else has eaten them, it's you. But you haven't even paid attention to a single cookie you've been eating, not until something is not quite right. When there is no cookie, when you're reaching for it, you will start paying attention again. And this is, it often feels like we're not in control of what we're doing, like we're possessed by some sugar demon or something that just taking you over. And to some extent, that is actually true, because we have delegated that to the lower brain. So we don't have to think about it. It's really convenient. We just sit there and we get rewarded, and we don't even have to pay attention to it. And it's brilliant. So, and this is all normal. It's nothing wrong with you. It's like you have a very efficient brain, and that's how we are made. But, you know, the design is as such to make it really easy for us to survive and to conserve as much energy as possible. So for those of us who are addicted to sugar or have massive cravings or however you want to label yourself or not, we have pretty good brains. They are functioning exactly the way that we want them to function, and that's brilliant. But it's obviously a problem when it comes to sugar and processed foods. So what we need to do is that we need to take back control of our brains. And the way we do that is by using our prefrontal cortex, which is the higher brain, which is the more evolved one, the one that humans have. So that's our privilege of being humans, is that we can actually watch ourselves and what we're doing. We can plan ahead, and we can plan for something that will give you a reward down the line. So if you want to go to work, you know that you're going to have a reward because you're getting a paycheck, or you're doing a degree in something and you will get your reward at the end. But it's a very long road there, but it's fine because we can think about the future and we can see the reward at the end of it. And most animals can't because they don't have this part of the brain. So what it boils down to is that we need to use our prefrontal cortex to plan. And I know that you probably try this already. You might have been writing down meal plans, and I'm just going to have one cookie that day, and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's failed, and I hear you, but I think the part that is missing is the last piece about our inability to manage our emotions. Because not having the cookie is actually easy. You just do not reach out for it and you don't put it in your mouth. It's very easy not to do. What's not so easy is all the feelings that come up when you do that. So if you imagine you have this cake right in front of you and you just really, really want it, and you're sitting there and you think, I'm not going to have it, I'm not going to have it. You're just fighting yourself, and it's all about willpower. And that's not the right way to go, because that's draining and it's exhausting and you're always going to lose. But if you have made a plan, I'm not having any cake, and you're letting your prefrontal cortex run the show, you know that this is it. This is what's happening. We have all grown up with other boundaries or rules or regulations, and that's fine. We can stay within those boundaries. But when it comes to those with the cake and ourselves, we often can't. So what I want to offer you is that you learn to just manage those emotions and sit with them and recognize that they are there without fighting them. And we want to think about what's going on in our heads. What are the thoughts I'm having that will make me crave that cake? For me, it's often just very short snippets that says, oh, I want something, or chocolate would be nice, or something like that. And this is the same as when I said trigger foods or whatever. I have joined a few Facebook groups for food addiction, etc., and you're not allowed to post pictures of food because it's triggering to some people. What I want to say is that that's very... It's a bit of a band-aid because you're taking away the triggers, so we're not treating the root cause. So it's the same thing as medicating your illness away rather than treating the illness. So I want to, rather than doing that, just process your emotions instead. Be present with them and allow them to be there. And I'm going to do a free mini training that I'm going to offer to you that you can request later this week. Unfortunately, I've had some technical difficulties, so it's not quite ready, where I'll go through a bit more in detail how to do this, because it takes a little bit to explain that. It's not that straightforward. But I think that most people are missing this piece. We get all the other pieces. We can go low carb and that will deal with some of it because we won't have the physical abstinence or the physical withdrawal symptoms, and that will eventually correct our hormonal imbalance or dysfunction. The social conditioning, on the other hand, it will always be there, and that will always trigger those cravings. So whatever comes up then, whatever thoughts you have, you need to be able to deal with those emotions, to be able to get rid of those cravings. If you can't do that, you're always going to struggle with it. And that's unfortunately very sad, but that's how it is. So our inability to deal with this and just let them be is what I think is the key, because that is the only thing that has ever worked for me. I've been ketogenic for long periods of time, or paleo. And although it takes away my cravings to a large degree, long term it does not work. And I start making keto desserts and other things that have no real sugar in them, but they have sweetener, and I'm eating those, and it is kind of pleasurable, but it's not the same as real sugar. So it's like giving yourself a little reward, but you actually want the big reward. And I'm still reinforcing this neurological pathway in my brain to keep doing this behavior. So I keep reinforcing the cravings and rewarding the cravings that I have, but I'm not getting the physiological response that a craving for a real piece of chocolate cake would give me. So now I'm actually into another topic almost. So just to summarize this quickly before I am wrapping up. So it's your hormones. So you want to avoid eating a lot of processed foods in general, which will help to a large degree, but not the whole way, I would say. So stick to any kind of food that looks like food, that is real food. And then we have the social conditioning, and that is harder to deal with. That is something that you need to work on over time. But just being aware and start, paying attention to what's going on. If you go to the cinema and you choose to not buy any popcorn or whatever, just try it out and sit there and be with those feelings and see what comes up. But also try to enjoy the movie. So don't spoil the movie because of it. And then the inability to manage our emotions. And that's the same thing. When those emotions are coming up, how do they feel in your body? Why is it so terrible to experience these that you need to go to food? Why can't we just be with them? It's just an emotion. It can't really hurt you. The only thing that will hurt you is when you're giving in to these emotions. So that's what I want to offer you today. And I'm going to do these Facebook Lives now at the same time for the whole week. So today's Monday, so I'll have another 6 to go, and I'm going to post the event just in a bit for tomorrow's Facebook Live with the new title. And so I just again want to say that this 3-part mini series that I've created, and unfortunately I haven't got the membership up and running yet, will be about why we love sugar so much and why it's so hard to quit or cut back, and then how to do it. So those are the 3 parts that one contains. So if you really want to watch that one, you can send me a PM here on Facebook with your email address, so I can either add you to the membership site manually, or I'll send you the registration link when it's up. Or you can just wait. It's fine that way as well. And it's totally free, so I'm not trying to sell you anything here. It's just easier to do it that way, because then I can get into each part in much more detail, which is hopefully more useful to you. So that was that, and thank you very much for attending. And I can't see any questions here, so I will assume that that's all for tonight, and I hope that we will see you again tomorrow. And thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye.